Hi friends, Mindy here. I have a process video for you today. I'm going to be setting up my journal for Note to Self for Bythewell4God. I'm going to be using this Build a Book kit that they released this month. This has everything that you need to create your own journal. So if you are new to Bible journaling, or you just want to give your hand at trying a junk journal or creating a little journal mini album, this has everything that you need. So you have some little fibers and textures there. You have a little acrylic notepad that was done on the Glowforge. You have all the thread that you need. Your kit will come with a needle as well. You also have this piece of Tyvek, and then your book boards. You have the two pieces for the front and back and spine. And then you have your two signatures that have 4 pages each. It's plenty to do this month's devotional. And this is craft cardstock, so it's nice heavyweight. So it's going to be able to stand up to a lot of things. And then you have your inside cover pages to cover after you wrap your journal, and then of course your inside piece as well to cover for the spine section. So this is everything really that you need to do this. There's also some instructions for showing how Lori put together hers. There's actually a QR code here you can use to go to her video. It's a YouTube video, and see how she did it. There's a template that they have used that shows how she has bound her journal and how to use this particular template. I'm going to be doing mine just a little bit differently, more just traditionally to how I like to create my journals and how I like to bind them. But there's really good detailed instructions with pictures and a video if you want to try that as well. There's also on my channel, I have another one. If you're not interested in really sewing, there's a twine binding, and I will try to link that below. So one of the things that I'm going to do here is just start with my spine piece, and I'm going to adhere this to my Tyvek. Tyvek is just kind of a fibrous material. It's really flexible and really, really strong. So it's going to be able to kind of reinforce that spine so that it can kind of withstand, you know, the opening and closing and everything of a book. So you can see what I did here is I pulled off the middle section, and then those two on the outside, I only pulled them down halfway, and that kind of gave me some little wings kind of to hold on to. Score tape is really, really sticky, and so you don't want it to stick down kind of before you're ready. And this is a way to kind of work around that. You can kind of just get it in position and use those little handles, and then glue it down. So when you're doing this, you want to make sure you're not putting your book boards right next to the spine piece. You need some space in there so that your book can fold. And a good rule of thumb is you want about as much space in there as the thickness of the board that you're using. So I'm going to use some score tape here. I'm going to put just a piece right here on the edge of the book board, and also one piece along the edge of the Tyvek, just as long as the actual spine piece is. And that way I can just make sure that everything is adhered really well. Now, I'm using score tape for the vast majority of what I'm doing today, but you could definitely use in another kind of adhesive, like cocoina glue stick would work. I just like score tape because I know it's really nice and strong. So I'm just kind of positioning this one. I'm actually using that other book board just to kind of get the right spacing. That way, when I put this one down, I can kind of eyeball it a little bit better. I know about how, you know, I can just kind of try to make it as even as possible. It's not going to matter if they're off a little bit, but you definitely want to leave that space, and you can see why, so that your book will fold nice and easy that way. So now I'm going to wrap that Tyvek around to the inside. So I'm just adding another little piece of score tape just as wide as the Tyvek to the inside of the book board, and then also to the inside of the Tyvek. I'm going to pull up those release papers, and then kind of whenever I'm doing a book board that's really thick like this, I like to kind of roll it up over. So I kind of roll it up on the edge, and then the rest of the way around. It just helps me get a really good crisp line, a really good crisp wrap that way. So I'm just going to do that same thing over on this side, and then every time you'll see me using my bone folder here a lot. I really just make sure that the adhesive is nice and stuck down. So you want to just kind of burnish that adhesive. So I decided to cover mine in paper this time. I do have some fabric that I'm going to do around the spine, but for my covers, I'm going to use this beautiful pattern paper. So I'm going to use some wider score tape here. I'm going to cover that whole section there, and I'm pulling up the little middle strips here, and then I'm going to do that same thing with these wider pieces where I'm just going to only pull them back just a little bit and kind of leave some flaps there, and then that way I can kind of take this paper and really get it into position. I need to make sure that I have enough that I can wrap around to the inside. I'm leaving myself, I want to say about 3/4 of an inch to wrap around to the inside. You could do less if you wanted to. I just, I like to have a good bit that wraps around to the inside. So you can see I'm just taking my time there, and then I can go in and pull those release papers, and then I'm burnishing everything down. And now I'm going to trim this top section off just a little bit. This is 6x8 paper, so I just needed to trim off a little bit, and I'm going to cut the corner. You could cut straight across here if you want to, just at an angle. I like to make this kind of little V shape. I just find that that works better for me when I am wrapping. So I'm going to go around here with my little score tape, my thinner score tape here, and I'm going to do, again, around the edge of the bookboard and around the edge of the paper. And then I'm going to burnish all that down and make sure it's good and stuck down. And then I'm going to start with the long side, and I'm going to take my bone folder here and just kind of score along the bookboard onto the paper. This is just going to help it fold and kind of help prevent it from tearing or creasing. So I'm going to pull up those release papers on this long side, and then I'm going to do that same thing where I kind of roll it up onto the edge here. You can kind of see, and then I'm going to roll it the rest of the way around, and that's just going to give me a really crisp edge. And then I'm just using my bone folder to make sure that's nice and snug before I press everything down. It just gives it a nice clean edge that way. And then having done the little scoring a little bit, it also just keeps the paper from cracking whenever you're using like a really thick paper. You know, Bythewell4God paper is really is pretty thick paper, and so it just kind of helps it so that it doesn't crack. So I'm going to do that with all of 3 sides now, and that will be my front cover. And then I'm just going to repeat that entire process on the back cover. So we're just going to cover the whole thing in score tape and wrap it, and now we have our cover. And I am going to actually use fabric for my spine. So I trimmed down this piece of fabric to the size that I wanted for my to wrap around my spine, and I'm just kind of getting everything lined up. And I'm actually going to use score tape and cocoina glue here. I'm going to use score tape down the center, and then I will use the cocoina glue stick on the edges. And again, you could use cocoina glue for this whole process if you wanted to. I just don't want to have to wait for it to dry personally, which is why I didn't use it like for the covers. But anytime you're using a liquid adhesive or adhesive that's wet, your paper can bubble or warp a little bit. So cocoina is not too bad about that because it's more like a paste. But you could use like a liquid glue, but I would suggest if you're going to do that you put a really thin layer down and make sure that it's spread out evenly, and that will make sure that you don't get those kind of like glue lines and different things. So you can definitely use like a white PVA if you want to, like a Barely Arts glue or whatever. I would just make sure you're spreading it out evenly in a nice thin coat. And so I'm just going on the inside here now with that cocoina glue and just wrapping the fabric around to the inside. And I'm going to take my bone folder and just make sure that down in the crease of that spine, I'm just kind of pushing it down in there so everything's just going to fold really neatly. And then this next piece is the spine. This is going to basically cover up that inside spine, and it's already scored and everything for you, so they made it really easy. So I'm just going to add some more score tape. I'm adding like 3 sections to the middle and then 1 piece on either of the little flaps on the side. And I'm not going to glue this down all out in one fell swoop. I'm going to start actually with just the middle section. So I'm going to pull those 3 middle ones up. And so this is the section that's inside the score lines. And because I need to be able to make sure that I'm getting these score lines lined up with my openings here on my cover. So I'm just taking a second here, lining all of that up before I really press this down. Again, I did that same thing with making the little kind of tabs with the release paper. And then that's just going to make sure that I have those folds right where I need them. And then you can see I have the score tape already on the spine piece. Now I'm just going to go in here and add it also to the inside of the book board. And that's just going to, again, I just like doing that on both of the pieces just to make sure that I'm getting a really good adhesion here. So I'm just going to add that score tape, and then I'll pull up the release papers from both sides and press those down. I just like to do it in sections this way, because that way I don't actually accidentally make a mistake. So then I'm going to come back through here with my bone folder now with this paper and just really make sure I'm kind of working this so that my book is going to close nice and easy. And then, so I just kind of keep going back through, folding it, kind of opening it, just making sure that that paper gets kind of tucked down in that crease. And then now I can add my end papers. And I'm just going to go through here with that same, this is score tape. Well, this is the scrapbook.com version, but it's the same thing, double-sided adhesive here. You could use an ATG gun if you have one. That's really good adhesive as well. I just wanted to use the score tape because I have that wide tape, so I can get, you know, a lot of coverage all in one application. So again, I'm just creating those little flaps, and then with this, I'm just going to line this up with the piece that is covering the spine, just so everything looks nice and neat. And then I'm just going to pull those release papers and do the same thing to the back, and then that will be everything for covering the inside. So the book, the Build a Book thing comes with 2 signatures. I am actually going to make 3. So I pulled 2 pages out of each of those signatures. So I'm going to have 2 signatures that have 3 pages and 1 signature that has 2 pages. And I'm going to cut myself a little template here so that I can make sure that my stitches are nice and even. I know there's, like I said, there's a template that comes with it, but it's for the way that Lori kind of binds her journals. And so I'm just showing you how I would create one for mine. So I'm just indicating, I put a T up there so that I know that this is the top. You want to make sure that that always stays even. And so I'm measuring this piece of paper so that, because it's the exact size of my signatures here, and I'm marking the middle, and then I'm coming in about, I want to say 3/4 of an inch from the bottom and 3/4 inch from the top, and making little marks. And then I'm going to draw straight lines all the way across there, and that's going to show me where to put my holes. So this paper is the exact size of my pages for the journal, so I marked that with a T, and I'm actually going to do that on each signature as well, so I make sure that everything lines up this way. Seems like an extra step, but you'll see why, because I actually make a mistake here in a little bit. But so I'm going to go through, and all of the signatures, I'm just lining this little template up, and I'm marking where I need to punch my holes for all 3 of my signatures. And now I need to indicate where I'm going to make the corresponding holes on my cover. Now the cover is a little bit bigger than the signatures. So what I'm doing is I'm measuring this center piece, which is about 1.5 inches, and I'm making a line down the center, because that's where one of my signatures is going to go. And then I want my other 2 signatures kind of equidistant from the middle section, so it ends up being a little over 1/2 inch on either side. So I'm just trying to keep that as even as possible. So I'm going to make little marks here just so that they're about the same distance from the center. It's not going to be totally perfect, but that's okay as well. And then I'm going to make these lines all the way down. I think you can kind of see them on camera. And then I'm going to take this same template now, and this is for the holes for the signature, and I'm going to mark these so that I can create kind of a grid. So I marked where those holes are going to go, and now I'm going to draw a line across. So wherever these 2 lines intersect is where I need to make a hole, and that will keep everything even. And so I get through this part, I got my lines here. You can see that I have this little grid basically. So everywhere those lines intersect, it is where I'm going to punch a hole. And so I have a heavy duty awl. I know in Lori's video, she used a hammer and a nail, which totally worked. And this book board is pretty thick. So, but you could definitely do it with a nail. I've seen people do it with a thumbtack, but I don't know about that with this particular book board. But I have a heavy duty awl. But I realized at this moment that my thing was upside down when I marked it. So I'm going to show you, you can see this middle section right here is just ever so slightly different. And this is why it's important to kind of indicate what is the top. And so I hadn't checked that before I started marking on my actual spine. So no problem. It was, no harm done. I just erased it and then lined it up and then drew a line in the proper place. And now I can go through here with my heavy duty awl here, and I'm just going to punch my holes. I'm punching into like a foam thing that I've had forever, but you could do like an old phone book or, all kinds of things. So now I have all my holes punched in these, in the cover. Now I need to punch my holes in my, signatures. So I'm just going to hold them. If you had like a phone book or something, you could kind of cradle these down in there. But there's not enough paper to really, you can pretty much just hold it and then just make sure that you're punching your holes into the fold of each of the spine. And then I'm putting these in order as well, making sure that, the first signature is the first signature. So you can see I've got all my holes here now and everything is ready to go. I have my holes punched in the spine. I have my holes punched in my paper. And now I'm going to sew. They gave you plenty of thread here, depending on how you want to do this. So I am going to just use a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. That's just typically what I use when I'm doing these kind of journals. You could do 5-hole. There's all kinds of ways that you could bind, like I said earlier. But so a rule of thumb is for each signature, you need about 2.5 to 3 times the length of the or the height of the paper. So I just went through and measured that, and then I cut 3 lengths of this thread, all the same length, and then I'm going to start sewing these in. So I'm going to do a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. There are a couple different ways that you can do this. I'm just going to show you the way that I personally like to do it. But first I want to erase my little grid that I drew on there. No harm done. So you could even leave it and it probably even wouldn't be very visible once you get everything sewn in, but I just went ahead and erased it. So I'm going to start from the middle hole in my signature, and I'm going to go into the middle hole of my cover and out to the outside, and I'm going to kind of hold that tail with my thumb there, and then I'm going to go up to the top, and you could go to the bottom, it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to go up to the top and come back in through the cover and through my papers. I had to fiddle with this a little bit because I accidentally let it slip, and I let go of all my papers, so I got them a little bit loose. I just have to get them lined back up here. So back into the center, and now you're going to skip that middle hole and go all the way down to the bottom and back out to the outside. So I'm going to go back through the signature, and I'm going to go out to the outside of the spine. Just make sure you're doing all in that same row. And then from that hole, you're going to go now back into the middle. And when you go back in, you just want to make sure that you're not going back through the thread that's already there. You don't want to split your threads because otherwise you won't be able to tighten it down like you need to. So just pulling that through here, and then you want to make sure that each tail is on opposite sides of that long piece, and you just pull it tight and then tie a knot around it. And that's all you do. And so I'm going to do that for all 3 of my little signatures. And this is how it looks when it is finished. So this is just a really quick way to kind of sew in your signatures. And I decided I wanted to add a few little embellishments. I'm not going to completely decorate my cover right now, but I am going to add just a couple things. I wanted to add these book corners. So these are Tim Holtz book corners. I'm just adding a little bit of glue. This is Helmore 450 quick dry. This is, you could use like Fabri-Tac or something like that. It's just a solvent-based glue. Just added a little bit, and then I'm going to kind of bend this as much as I can with my fingers, and I'm going to take some pliers and just squeeze that down, and that will just keep it on there. I just like to add the glue. You don't really need to. I just want to make sure that they stay. So I'm going to do that to all 4 corners. I won't make you watch me do that, but I wanted to add those little book corners on there. And then I'm going to show you, I also off camera made a little, my little tassel here. So I have my piece, and then I just added a few things. I have some paper beads that I made in another video. I can link that down below as well. And I just have all of those. Right now I just have this temporarily in here because I'll probably take this off actually while I'm working in my journal, and then reattach it later. And then I'll probably also add a closure at some point, and maybe finish decorating the cover. But anyway, for right now, that's it for me. So if you liked this video, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And until next time, bye.